You really need people thinking smarter, more strategically, and perhaps some better people over at Treasury as well. I don't think Janet Yellen is doing the best job possible, because you need smart people at Treasury that really understand an economic warfare. Let's face it, like Russia, I think if you go back to long-term capital and the Russian default days, right? Like you can go back to those days, and that's, I've been told by many, when Russia really started becoming more sophisticated, if you would, financially, and they're recognizing the financial tools that they can use to their advantage in this sort of warfare scenario. And we don't have it. Like, I just don't think that we have the intellectual power that we need to have at Treasury. You got a few too many English and poli-sci majors running around the Treasury Department, and they don't get it. So best case scenario, maybe Trump's able to get more people from Wall Street over there, more people that have some sophisticated knowledge of finance in order to think about it at a state level.
You know, it's interesting, Trish. You have all of this hullabaloo now over Project 2024, which is, you know, like the Heritage Foundation kind of document that the left is kind of like making into like a really like terrifying. I think there was a headline in Rolling Stone that was, you know, just sort of painting it as this disastrous thing, but it does get into those details of like, how do we reform individually, like department by department, all of these agencies and all of these federal departments, you know, to make them more effective and to kind of bring them in line.
I'll give you a funny story. Sure. Wilbur Ross, when he was at Commerce, so Wilbur Ross, really, really well-known, successful investment banker and investor. And listen, Wilbur's had a legendary career and very interesting guy. He went in, and my sources had told me at one point they were looking to do some restructuring in Venezuela. The idea was, okay, eventually Maduro was going to go, maybe Guaido or somebody was going to come in. And the first sort of order of business was making sure Wilbur sat everybody down and wanted to know if the lights were going to be on and the water running. And some sources of mine that were in the meeting said it was really kind of fascinating because he had such a business approach and he was asking all the right questions. And some of these dunces, right, at Treasury and State, like they weren't thinking as clearly and sort of with the executive functioning capability of someone like a Wilbur Ross. So I say that because, look, the business community has to do this kind of stuff all the time. And I just think we need smarter, better people. And not just at the cabinet level, but all the way through. Like, who are the people that are doing the work? Who are the people that are writing the laws and changing the tariffs and all of those things that go into actually having some kind of policy results? We need good people, smart people. The Russians learned back in the day, around the time, it would have been, 1998 with the Russian default back then. They learned a lot. They've been able to implement it. We need to be able to do the same.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm not pro-Russian, but it's sort of like you can't help but admire the way that they've like managed their position, and they've turned the whole, you know, half the world's population, they pulled them away from us away from the US and into their sphere, and they're kind of the ringleader. You know, learn something from the savoir-faire of these other great powers and their ability to kind of manipulate the scene in international relations. But
play chess, not checkers.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, I think, you know, when you think about one thing I've kind of noticed about markets since the debate, you know, they've been kind of strong. You know, I think the odds really changed after Biden delivered that performance. And, you know, you're kind of noticing a little bit of optimism. So another kind of...
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, you could go through it. And I was looking at sort of a graphic the other day, side by side, of even just the simplicity of tax policy, right? And the extension of the making permanent these lower tax rates, bringing corporate taxes lower. I mean, these are all the things that he wants to do, which are very growth driven. Now, granted, he's got himself in a bit of a situation that is frankly, because of the reckless, and I mean this, like reckless spending that has happened under Joe Biden. I mean, Trump wasn't a saint either. I think a lot of politicians love to spend money, right? Like, because you can fix something in the here and now and make everybody really, really happy. But if you're going to lower taxes like that, which I do believe are going to be very accretive to growth and very, very good, we'll have good outcomes. You also have to be willing to say, okay, where can we cut back? You don't want to cut back on military, for goodness sakes. That's the amazing thing about all of this. I'm sort of blown away by, we're getting ourselves into these scuffles overseas, and yet we're simultaneously cutting back on military spending, and we're putting it into, okay, let's go pay for Tom, Dick, and Harry to go get a degree, or maybe not to get a degree, or a PhD in gender studies. Okay, great. It seems so, frankly, lousy, right, in terms of the policy efforts. If you want to actually encourage people to get educations, I mean, have some sensibility about it. Say, okay, we need more people in the medical sphere. Okay, you want to get a nursing degree? Maybe the government will consider helping you out on that. But right now, it's like they just want to give away blind money, I think, to get votes. That's the whole problem. Is like trying to excite the base and the youth, and it's not working even for them. So I agree with you. I'm very pleased to see what the RNC is putting forward in terms of policies, certainly as it pertains to the economy. And I think that does encourage the market. I think you have a lot of really smart people too, a lot of smart investors, a lot of smart people from the business world that are saying, we like this. I mean, Bill Ackman, a good example, right? Very out there on Twitter these days, saying that this is the better path forward for America.
Yeah, one of the things I kind of was encouraged by with the references to AI and crypto in that document was, I think Trump is very much listening to like the sort of the more conservative venture capital community and the Peter Thiels and all of those folks, Elon Musk, in terms of really trying to be aligned with, there's this sort of like kind of conflict in the Republican Party between like big tech and right. And they kind of view it as the enemy because of the censorship issue, but, and other issues. But at the same time, I mean, like that's America's strength is our ability, our technological leadership. We have these Mag 7 companies. They're pretty extraordinary businesses with incredible intellectual property. They're, probably a quarter of the value of all global stocks. That's kind of like our national treasure and our ability to innovate and kind of have a leadership role in the technologies of the future, in particular AI. So it's encouraging for me to hear.
You want to keep Lena Khan away.
Well, or just look, it's you don't want to necessarily do harm to the one thing in America that's kind of working well right now, right? And that they can't do necessarily.
No, he gets that. Let me tell you, he just does. Like he just does. And I saw it even when we could have had a huge ordeal over, and it was obviously horrible, the Khashoggi thing. I don't even want to get into it, but Saudi Arabia. I was there at the White House and interviewed him the day that all that was going down. And I mean, he said it. He said it on record and off. I mean, not off record. It was all on record, but he said it on camera. He said it off camera. He's like, I don't want to lose 500,000 jobs. Like you kind of have to be rational about this. And certainly when it comes to the economy and GDP growth and inflation and et cetera, I think he's very, very rational on that front. Certainly more rational than what we've seen over the last 3.5 years. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see what happens. Like I said, you hold your breath. It's minute by minute right now because Nancy and George, they're aligned against him right now.
Trish, you also see it with some of those very specific things that they're bringing up in the platform, the EV mandates, right? They're very unrealistic and they will damage, if we hold to them, like they will damage the American auto industry. And they're calling down saying, no, we can't, just forget it. This isn't going to work. Or the energy issues, right?
Yeah. And by the way, I'm all for it. You give me all the energy I can get. Thank you very much. Like I'll take all energy, but the idea that you're somehow going to shut off one whole sector, which is very relevant, by the way, for our own national strategic interests and our own national security, and then try and expect people to shell out $60,000 for a new EV. I mean, come on. It's really sort of asinine how they've approached all of this. And then the likes of Jennifer Granholm, the former failed MSNBC anchor, former governor of Michigan, who doesn't even seem to understand how energy markets work. I don't know. Like, again, I just say we need smarter people, Rob. We need smarter people.
We do. And it's funny that the narrative was always, the adults are back in the room. Look, I don't think they get cause and effect, and they can't think beyond, they don't see long-term consequences to any of these things. Look what's going. I mean, right now we're in the midst of a period where after a period of 20 years, we're finally have increased electricity demand in the United States, right? And that's this AI stuff and the call on power from data centers. Yeah. And if we do EVs, it's going to stress the grid. So it's like, okay, I mean, how are you going to do that? The wind turbines, fine, they can help on the margin, but
oh, and not to mention the environmental hazards of lithium mining. I mean, it's like, it's sort of a game of whack-a-mole, right? You have this opportunity, but you're presented with this set of problems. And so maybe they need a little diversification there in the strategy overall so that you kind of have all your bases covered. Anyway, I want to thank Rob. We're going to have to work on your technology. I think I just lost you for a second, but the point just being that we need to overall, I think, really be more strategic and thoughtful about how we're moving forward. I want to remind everybody, you can go to 76research.com or 76reports.com. Use code word dollar, DOLLAR, to subscribe to the 76 report. You can look at the model portfolios there as well. It's something like, I think if you put on a model portfolio, it's like an additional $23 a month or something. And it's really well worth it because you got to take care of yourself right about now. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Make sure you go and follow us on our live YouTube channel at 76 Research, and we will talk again very, very soon.